Greetings, it is I, Tantus Naravan Jacobin, Lord and Emperor of the Jacobin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Well, where we last left off, we were talking about various characters you can find and meet, and we talked about villains. Let's talk about allies. Because the fact is, allies are there to help give support to your players. Most of the time, it's information, but they can also make trades, other various things that help assist your players. Allies can be relatives, they could be lovers, they could be someone they're related to, could be a coworker, could be someone from their past, it could just be someone they rescued on the course of some kind of adventure. Regardless, you're going to want to flesh out the allies as much as you possibly can. The very bare minimum you want to do is to have a personality and a name. You're going to effectively just make some notes on every one of the allies that your players could effectively call upon in your book, so that when they do call upon them, you're able to pull out this character and provide the relative amount of information and play them as if they are an appropriate character in the story. They are a more important character because they are friends of your heroes. They're going to start with at least a friendly, if not helpful, attitude to your players. Now, sometimes these characters could join with your players and adventure with them for a period. They could be helping with combat, or they could provide some kind of skill that your players don't have and supplement them for not having this skill. Regardless, you should plan to have this built into the encounter, but don't also overuse it. For one thing, you don't want your characters to become reliant on these allies, and you don't want them to feel that they're stealing some of their spotlight too. If the one time I have to pull on this demolition experts ally of myself because none of us are truly experts at demolitions to blow this thing up, that's one thing. But if we need him every time, that's an entirely another thing. Now, animals and low intelligence creatures are an entirely class of their own. They're driven by instinct, and most of that instinct is eat. That's what most of these things do. Now, you get creatures, which are curious, which will check you out. But most of the time, they're going around, they're looking for food. Regardless if you're the food or not, doesn't matter to them. They're just looking for food and getting into it. You are effectively using one of these creatures, you have to figure out a natural ecology which it's going to be found in. Granted, for any kind of real-world creature, any kind of animal, you get an idea of what its natural ecology is. If this creature shows up in some way, in some kind of unnatural ecology, or doing some kind of unnatural behavior, the hand of a sentient creature, of an intelligent creature, is of course in play and can oftentimes explain these things. And you should leave hints and clues as to that being the reason behind it. If your people go onto an island where there shouldn't be tigers, and there's tigers there to attack them, more than likely someone dropped those tigers off there, for whatever reason. And you might be able to find that reason out in the course of their adventures. Maybe they won't. But, you know, the people there that would probably have put the tiger there are the main hint as to what the reason is. Oh, people put this here. For some reason they did, but they put it here. Otherwise, creatures are going to want to eat, be safe, protect their young. One of those three things are the basic motivations that any other creature is going to have. Any kind of low intelligent animal-like creature. Now, we've basically built most of our campaign setting. We've set everything up. And once you've built this up, you're not technically done as the game master. This is a living, organic world that you've built, a world that will change. Just because you've set things up this way doesn't mean changes won't occur in the course of the adventure. You've just built it the way it should be right now. Changes, as I'm saying here, will occur. Now, the fact is, you could very easily use reoccurring settings, reoccurring characters. You don't have to have your players go to a lot of different places. This is a way that you could possibly have them develop relationships with people, become better friends with them, maybe get in romantic relationships, build themselves up as feeling as a part of the world. The problem with using the same characters over and over again, it makes them feel less and less natural because you're just focusing on them and almost forced into that situation. The fact is, if you use them judiciously, use over basically reoccurring characters in a proper manner. If your players like a certain diner, always go to that diner, and most of the time certain people are there, like that one waitress they like, is they always go when that waitress is there. Maybe the cooks are different sometimes. Things like this that you're not maybe always encountering them, but more often than not you're encountering them. That makes them irregular because it's a behavior pattern that your characters have that makes it irregular, rather than you forcing irregular into the situation. Granted, if they're working for an organization or they have other people working for them, these might be regular NPCs that they encounter. They might have someone that just gets coffee or something for them. Regular person, not much of an attitude. There, establish a relationship with them, build it up, but they've set up for that character more than you set up for that character. Granted, you could have basically had them get into a situation where they'd feel necessary to hire this person on, or they could be part of an organization that person's already there. Then they're sort of first in that situation. But again, I'm using it wisely. Now, there is some disadvantage to this too, which you have to be careful about. Bank robbers, or any kind of villain, could run into a situation where they might discover this person is friends with your heroes, and then kidnap them and use them as a bargaining tool to keep your heroes at bay, to maybe threaten them. Doing this can cause your characters to basically want to back away from making relationships with people, especially if you do it too much. If you do it a few times, that's one thing, but overusing this, basically using your players' loved ones and friends against them, they're going to want to back away from getting any kind of relationship without like that ever, and that's kind of unnatural. So you want to keep it in a way that maybe some of this occurs, maybe occasionally, if you want to use it there, not enough for them to feel like, oh, my friend at the diner is always safe. But if they learn about my girlfriend, they might target my girlfriend. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, maybe. They might not go quick, dastardly right after their loved ones kind of things. Maybe they will, depends on your villains. Now, you could also use this to help foreshadow events. Effectively, foreshadowing is leading into what's going to happen in the future. It's the basic way of defining it. To do this, I could have a reoccurring character that might be linked to that. I could have maybe some kind of evidence, like if they're looking into something on an adventure and they get some evidence, and all of a sudden they find some evidence that doesn't link to this adventure whatsoever, and they're like, what's this? This is for something, I don't know what it is. Then, when this future event, this future adventure occurs, they could be like, uh-huh! We saw this coming. We saw information about this. Oh, it all makes sense now. It's that realization that springs them into, wow, awesome kind of feeling that you really want them to get. Now, let's talk about getting favors. Effectively, you have your allies, but there might be a point in time where you're pressing them to get something out of them. And the situation could be very dangerous, or it could be a situation that's not very favorable. Both of these lead to a whatever ally or person that you're trying to convince to not want to help you. Now, this is where actual abilities of a charismatic hero are important and come into play, because charismatic heroes can make a favor check. They make a favor roll, which is a d20 plus their favor modifier, and they compare it to a DC to see if they can convince a ally or some other similar type of NPC to effectively grant them a favor. Now, this DC is going to be determined by the game master, your GM, and there is some suggestions for DCs in the book that a GM can use to reference and to figure out what the DC will be depending, again, situation, threat level, basically come up with what your charismatic hero has to roll in order to convince that person, come on, help us out. Make sure we get this done correctly. But that's it for today. I talked a little bit about allies, an important type of character that might help out your PCs. I talked about animals. It's an important type of GM character you're going to have to know about because they might come up. Because even the fact is, filling to something like dogs, guard dogs, that's an animal. You're going to have to be ready for an animal to be in your game then. Then I began talking about your campaign world and making sure it's still organic, that everything after you set up, that you help develop relationships with NPCs, GM characters, and your players, that you make sure to avoid certain things, overusing recurring characters, and making it that your players don't want to make any relationships. Don't threaten all the game master characters too much that makes it feel like they're all going to die. Then I talked about favors, that, you're going to want favors sometimes from someone, and your charismatic heroes, they can provoke them. They can get those favors out of people. In the next episode, we're going to talk about contacts. Sort of an ally version, but maybe not quite as heavy as an ally, but can still get you information. We'll go into details about contacts. And then we're going to move into a modern world. Because we've talked about all this other stuff here, but we're going to have to talk about making a game in a modern world. Because there are certain things in a modern world that are different than any other role-playing game system that you're going to have to think about and make sure you put in. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave it in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just for the channel, The Empire, The Work I Do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link description below. There's some great rewards there, and it helps to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.